Hey, this is Teddy Burris, and this conversation is not about LinkedIn. It's not about social media. It's not about networking. It's about what's the cost of that job. Then what is the cost of taking that job? Now, let me preface this conversation by letting you know that I understand that having a job and getting a job is important. This is fact. However, at what cost? I talked with a veteran today, and he told me he's looking for a job that fulfills three requirements. Requirement number one is he's got to have an impact, a positive impact on others. Requirement number two, he's got to be able to provide for his family. And requirement number three is he's got to be able to get out of bed in the morning, heading off to doing what he loves to do, doing what he's charged to do and enjoying it. He told me that money's important, but not at the risk of losing these other requirements. Money's important, but not at the risk of losing the other requirements of having a positive impact, supporting his family, and enjoying what he's charged with doing. Now, I talked with a business professional a few days ago, and he told me another story. He told me a story that he was considering a job that was far different than anything he'd ever taken. And that this new job, even though it sounded exciting, even though it was paying good money, even though it was a challenge that he was willing to take, it was going to require that he be on the road 80% of the time. 80% of the time. His fear was he was going to lose out on the connection that he has with his family, the relationship he has with his kids, the relationship he has with his wife. He feared that all that travel, his home would suffer, not only through the people in his home, but maybe supporting and maintaining the home, his gardens, his lawn, his community activities, because he was going to be on the road so much. And he was asking himself, what's the cost of taking this job? Now, I talked with another business professional the other day, and he was looking at a new job as well that seemed to be very exciting. Lots of challenge. He believed it was going to be good pay, working for a really good organization, but it was a 12-hour shift management job. 12-hour shifts. He had to work for a whole week, Monday through Sunday, on 12 hours, off 12 hours, on 12, off 12, on 12, off 12 for a whole week, and then he would be off for the whole next week. And then he would come right back on 12, off 12, on 12, off 12, on 12, off 12 for a whole week. His fear was, could his body withstand the challenges? His fear also was his relationships with his family and his community going to be able to survive while he did that work? Now, I talked to a friend of mine a few years ago, and I remember this conversation. He had to drive 150 miles round trip every day. He lived outside of D.C. and he drove into town every day. And anybody who drives D.C. knows a 75-mile trip into and out of D.C. takes forever. Traffic's always a nightmare. There's always an accident. And he also had that, beyond that stress of the commute, he had to buy breakfast and lunch in town every day in D.C. Again, those of you who know D.C. know that meals in D.C. are not cheap. He wore out 2 cars, totally wore them out in the 20 years that he worked there. He often ended up leaving his home at 5 o'clock in the morning and not getting home until after 9. Regularly, when he got home, he just fell asleep on the couch. Woke up the next morning, got in the shower, and left again. He did the math, just the math on clothing, automobiles, breakdowns, service, meals, hotels when he stayed in a town. And it was exorbitant, the amount of money he was spending. The cost on his family, his relationships, and his community was equally as staggering. He had a job. It was a great job. But at what cost? Now, I remember my own world. I remember a time in my life where I traveled every week, 18 months in Vegas. And then a few years later, 18 months in Orlando. I lived in hotels. I drove rental cars. I flew out of town early on Mondays or late on Sundays. And often I didn't get back till late on Thursday or early on Fridays. I dressed impeccably because I had to. I ate at expensive places. I wore out my luggage, wore out my backpack. I missed seeing my daughters grow up. I missed participating in their events in school and community. I missed out on my wife growing and learning to be involved in her community. I had a long-standing relationship with a 500 count bottle of Advil. I went to the hospital twice thinking I was having a heart attack. Fortunately, it was stress-related illness. I made a good salary. I had a good job, but at what cost? My point of this message is to challenge us to think about this when we're looking at new job opportunities. Challenge us to think about at what cost. Are the costs of taking that job recoverable? Are the costs reasonable? And are the costs something we can afford? Take a job at what cost? So consider before you take on that job. Do the math. Write it out. Script out the cost of the dollar. Script out the cost of your time. Look at the cost of your relationships to your family, your friends, and your community. Is the job worth it at that cost? Go through a deliberate decision to think about that. Don't just take a job. Take a job that fulfills your expectations and your goals and your dreams while also supporting your family and your community and yourself. Take a job that you really believe the cost is worth it. When you take a job, you want to be able to say to yourself with no reservations, the cost to me, to my health, to my community, to my family is worth it for this job. And if you challenge yourself to think about the cost of taking that job, you're likely to focus yourself on the right jobs that will give you the right rewards and the right compensation. And you won't just be taking a job. Take a job at the right cost. I hope this is helpful. This is Teddy. Have a great day. Wish you all the best.